Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee, and today I'm going to be talking about the knowing, doing, leading gap. It's something that I came across when I was recently back at Harvard Business School for my reunion. I won't tell you how many years. It's been a long time, and it was interesting. I was at one of the best sessions was around generative AI, and the professor asked everyone to stand up about who has ever tried using ChatGPT at least once. And about 80% of the audience stood up, which was pretty amazing. And then he said, stay standing if you use it every day. And pretty much everyone sat down, and only about 20 people, I was included, to actually kept standing up. And he said, this is an example of the knowing and doing gap. And what I thought and commented later on in the session was that I think there's also a knowing, doing, and leading gap. And I'll share with you some data today that I recently did with Solutions 2 around a CIO and IT senior executive roundtable that they did. That really demonstrates this extremely well. And I think this is really important because right now is a very formative time where a lot of us know what generative AI can do. Some of us are actually doing it either personally or as organizations, but very few of us are stepping up and actually leading. And I just realized my cat is in the room, so I'm going to throw him out because he gets very jealous when I'm speaking. And this is my cat Cosmo. So he's somehow stuck in here. You need to get out of it, baby. See you. All right. One of those wonderful things about live streams. All right. So let's talk about the leading gap, the knowing gap. And first of all, I would love to hear from you, where you're coming from. Always love to welcome you to the live stream. But also, how much do you personally and your organization use, actually depend on generative AI to get your work done? And so I'll give you an idea. I've started using it, and I use it every day. I use it as a writing tool. I use it as a thought partner, a generative content idea. I use it to iterate lots of different things. And I'll give you some examples of how I use that, and also some things that I've seen from other people do it too. So let's get into this today. So please share with me again if what you all are doing with generative AI, how it's impacting the way you actually do work, and also address how you moved from knowing to doing to this very important part of leading. All right, so I'm going to show you some slides here today, first of all. Let me see if I can get these up. Here we go. I'm going to do this. So this is some data that came from a partnership I've been working with Solutions 2, and they have a wonderful IT roundtable that you may want to take a look at. It's a great group. I'm just going to put up a URL, a QR code that leads to the IT group where you can, IT roundtable, where you can learn more. I'm going to also just hide this because it's a little hard to actually see it. And let me actually here okay, finding my notes here. It's a little difficult as always. I'm going to put it into the comments where you can um, learn more about the IT roundtables and you get to hear me typing away and doing these things. Okay, so I just put into the comments, so hopefully you can see them. Where they are going. Here we go. It's going through now. So, because I want to be able to show you the full slides here, but Solutions 2, that I'm speaking at the roundtable on the 15th. So if you join that roundtable soon, you'll get invited to my talk with them on the 15th, talking about some of these topics. All right, so a couple things. First of all, what we found in the survey, again, this was 78 senior IT executives at companies ranging from about 800 million all the way to, I think, 5 billion. And so what we found was that 17% said that they believe that generative AI would be extremely transformative. 61% said that it was very transformative, and not very transformative, only 22%. So the vast majority, 78%, said that generative AI was going to be transformative on one level or another. But when you go to what they're actually doing personally, you can see that about 10% are using it nearly every day. Another 2% are using it multiple times per week, again, to get their work done. Um, 35% are using it multiple times a month. 40% have tried it but do not use it regularly. And to my amazement, 5% said still haven't tried it yet. So these are the CIOs of organizations. And I heard from the leader of the group that this is at the very top of their agendas of how do they use generative AI? What are the use cases? How do we think about the value? They've been tasked by their executive team to go and figure out what to do with all of this stuff. And you can see that 45% have either not used it or just used it once and aren't using it directly at all. So this is the knowing about generative AI and the doing gap. And that gap is significant here, especially from our top leaders who we expect to know more about what's really going on. So I think this is really a problem because one of the things that I think is so important is that we try lots of these different tools. So I want to say hi to Jay. Just take a minute here and just say hi to a couple of people. Some good comments here too as well. So Jay says that he's using AI for research. Fantastic, Jay. If you want to provide any more details about some of the research tasks, would love to share that too as well with people. And then also, let's see, there's another comment here that was great. Bob was asking, do you experiment with different GAI, general artificial intelligence, for different tasks, or stick with the ones that you like and trust? Bob, I try everything out there. I'm trying a lot of the agent-based tools, the baby AGIs, things like that that are out there, and I was experimenting with some of the new announcements that OpenAI made yesterday at the developer conference. For example, they announced that GPT-4 Turbo is going to have, I think, 75, I think 100,000 tokens that you can put into the prompts, which is hundreds of pages of context that you can use now. So it's not just a simple prompt that you can put entire documents in, and I'll share a little bit about how to do that. I also have a private um, LLM that I use with my own content that I use to create content with and as a thought partner, because I know everything in there is mine. I don't have to worry about whether it's somebody else's thoughts. It's just me and my brain with the output from that. So I think one of the key things here is, as a researcher, as somebody who's trying to understand this, I'm using it constantly. But I spoke with a CEO who also saw this recently, and I'll be sharing his case study soon. He saw it in December, started playing with it immediately, and by December 21st, had started a Google Doc talking about the strategy for his company. And this is a substantial size company. This is not, a small, medium sized company. And uses it constantly, uses it very strategically, is driving forward the organization. And this is CEO directly using it to craft memos and emails, using it as a thought partner, using it strategically in all aspects of his role as a CEO. So I think this is the time right now to be absolutely thinking about this. And it's really difficult because knowing about it and doing it, there's a big gulf there. And it's really difficult for many people to be doing this. All right. Jay, thank you so much for that comment. Um, and Jay has also put up to the comments on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Jay, for also repeating, because for some reason I cannot post onto LinkedIn. Liberty is saying good morning here. We also have Mark coming with a question, how he uses it, chatbots versus traditional online search. There's a huge time savings. On average, we spend close to 5 hours daily just searching for information online. With chatbots, this drops by a significant 2 hours and 2 minutes. That's a 21% reduction in our online information quest. Mark, thank you so much for sharing that data point. It's amazing that you can see just how significant the amount of time that you can save. Because instead of searching for answers, reading through lots of pages, it's actually giving you the answers. And I think this is the initial way that you can start using these chatbots as a replacement to search and information gathering, because oftentimes you're looking for a very specific piece of information or best practice, and the chatbots can start helping with that. The other way to think about though is to now put in scenarios, to put in context, and I'll talk a little bit about how to actually do that in just a second. All right. Let's see. Just going on to see if there are any other things. Um, yes, and Bob was sharing. Yes, you can actually put up the 300 pages of text in a single prompt. And Jay also has shared on LinkedIn just a link to the announcements from OpenAI. Lots of new announcements in there. Another thing that I'm very excited about is the ability to create your own private LLM through fine tuning, more refined fine tuning is going to be available to everyone. It's not actually available. They're just going to make it available. There are lots of various startups that now do this. I will probably be writing a post about that soon just to list out all the ways that you can create your own private large learning model and your own chatbot to use with your own content, either behind your firewall as an organization or with your audiences. So a lot of interesting work. And Jay just shared. I use this a lot. Perplexity.ai. I've seen it, but I don't know exactly what it does, Jay. So if you can share how you use it and why you use it, it would be great to have everybody see that. All right, moving on with his data because it's fascinating to see what happens. So we saw that 78% of IT leaders say it's going to be really transformative. And yet, only 55% are using it at any degree, and only 20% are using it on a fairly regular basis. So, I want to go on and share just a couple other pieces of data here. This is the demonstration of the knowing, doing, leading gap. And we gave the IT leaders a whole bunch of different activities that their organization could be doing. And what was interesting, and unfortunately, I wasn't quite surprised by this. 41% said they were doing nothing. They were doing nothing. They knew about it. They're thinking about it, but they weren't actually doing anything with generative AI in their organizations. They were still casting about, trying to figure out what they could do. There's so much uncertainty. The reasons is that it's just giving you so many different options. It's hard to put down and say, this is what we should be doing when everything is changing. And yet, when you look at the actual activities that I created, and there's one more that I'm hiding still. This is the doing. These are the people who are actually doing things. And you could pick multiple choices of this. So 38% said they were developing guidelines on how to use generative AI. 38% said that they were identifying testing use cases. Another 28% said they were assembling a generative AI council. Yay, strongly believe in that. And then 13% said they were creating some sort of training on generative AI. So I thought this is a nice example of how many organizations are actively doing something and closing that gap between knowing and doing. And what was interesting was how many people were actually leading a strategy and developing generative AI strategy. Again, 13%. So what it's showing, this is the leading gap. So a lot of people were doing things, but were they actually leading and saying, this is the direction we want to take with generative AI versus this is what we're just doing. And those are all good things to be doing, all laying foundations, but even just starting to develop drafting, not having even completed, just drafting an AI strategy, only 13% were actually doing it. So I think one of the key issues here is how do we actually start closing this gap? And I think one of the ways for us to be thinking about this is we need to push these IT leaders and leaders in general to be pushing more about this. And Liberty has a great point here. IT leaders tend to be very conservative, status quo oriented. New pushes for ideas usually come from the business side. Absolutely agreed. And the business side are the ones who oftentimes are sort of dragging IT along. Come on, make this happen. And yet at the same time, the business leaders, and I'm about to go do a survey on business leaders. So if you're interested in participating in that survey, please ping me. I would love to send you the survey and have you participate in it. It'll be fun because it'll be run by an AI. So if you want to participate in that, please ping me through all my various social media to send me a message, and I'll make sure you're on the list to get that. So more coming on that in just a second. But the business side is also part of this knowing, doing, leading gap because when you just look at how many people are actively using these tools, really thinking about how their work is changing and being transformed in a way that we could never have imagined. It's not happening yet. And so I understand that there needs to be some time and energy spent into this, put into this, but that is what it's going to take as far as leaders to actually start doing it. So, Liberty, great point. The IT leaders aren't necessarily the ones to be at the vanguard, to be the leaders on this. But at the same time, given how much pressure there is and demand from the business side, it is still really surprising that even like the most basic things like developing guidelines on how to use generative AI or looking at use cases just isn't happening in the vast majority of these organizations. All right, so a couple comments here. I just want to catch up on this. So Jay said you're using Perplexity a lot and you're using it instead of Google search because it gives you the sources that are referenced. That's right. Perplexity gives you the answer, but it also sources what places are helping them generate the answer. So you can go back and check and also check for things like hallucinations. And Jay has shared in LinkedIn just an example of what he's actually sharing. I can't see it, Jay, but I will definitely go and check that out later in just a bit. So thank you, Jay, so much for sharing that. So a couple other things I just want to point out today. Also, if you want to get the slides, let me put up that link here. And let's see, you can get the slides here too as well. And I will put that into the comments too as well. Let me get that going. It's a new interface that I have. So hopefully you can get the slides easily. Let me know if it's not working. Trying a whole bunch of new stuff here. It's a new landing page that I have to get slides. Hopefully it's a little more streamlined. All right. So I want to talk a bit about 3 ways to actually start closing this gap. And I think they're not going to be earth shattering, but basically the first one is you got to use it. You've got to use tools like ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, whatever these tools are, use it regularly. And in particular, take advantage of this very, very large prompt query that you can put in and get better at creating the context for your prompts. So, for example, on Claude, for example, and if you can get your hands on some of the Turbo examples, we can put in again, as Bob was saying, up to 300 pages of text. So, what can you load in? For example, I will load in examples of my writing style. So, I literally have these lined up in a Google Doc with links to it. Here's examples of my writing style, some emails that I've written in the past. Here are sort of my big tenets of what I believe in terms of my overall approach to things, and then use this to create content around a particular topic. Or there is a a news announcement about something like the OpenAI thing. I will ask it to summarize it, and then to say how does my thinking, and I'll upload again some examples of my thinking. How does that inform the reactions? What reactions would I have if I were an analyst to these key announcements coming out of this announcement from OpenAI? So I can do that in the context of all of my writings through my private LLM, but you could also just upload hundreds of pages of your marketing content, of your company strategy. Again, it's all behind closed doors, so no one is it's not actually going on to the public. But you can actually have, how do I think about this? How do I line the things that are important and provide the generative AI some context so that it can actually give me back the answers what I'm looking for? And so it's super helpful in things in terms of using it, but I would encourage you not just to use it, but to also think about how you're going to transform the way you do work, the questions you would ask, the things that you could do differently because of your use of these tools. And that will only come as you experiment and use it as often as you can. And this gap between knowing and doing, the doing part in particular, is evolving how you're doing it and finding those places, those edge cases of transformation that are going to make a big difference in how you get work done. Mark Evans shared that they're significantly changing the way they're just doing research. And Jay Bryan also said that they're using perplexity in new and different ways and replacing the way they used to do search. I would encourage you to think about how putting in lots of context into a prompt. This is going beyond prompt engineering. It's really teaching these tools how to think the way that you want it to think, as you, as a marketing partner, as whatever you want to have it be doing at that particular moment. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would do is to get your organization doing those activities before, getting guidelines in place, identifying use cases that you can then test and pilot, assembling an AI council, and developing training are all really important. And if you don't want to develop the training, then there are off the shelf courses that you can get from Coursera, from LinkedIn, that are really good. And just point people to those places so they can start getting up to speed on what generative AI can do. And the third and most important part is really thinking about how you're going to drive a generative AI strategy. And, and in particular, I've done this in previous live streams and articles. Link it very closely to your purpose, to your values, and to your existing business strategy. Because if you do that, then you are going to be in such a better place to be able to think about everything. And the main reason why I think people are not doing and especially leading is because there is so much uncertainty. Well, what if I waste my time? What if I put this and plan a strategy and it changes completely because of new tools or new pricing? And what I can tell you is that we are moving directionally. It's stable enough now that we know the general parameters of how things are going to develop. And you will be so much better off if you have some preliminary plan of how you're going to create competitive advantage based on the things that will not change. Your purpose, your values, your core business strategy are not going to change. Those are givens. So use those as the starting points to create that foundation of stability to be able to look at this space that is incredibly uncertain, changing constantly. And, I like to say my hair is on fire every morning because yet another thing has changed. So don't let the uncertainty keep you from making progress. If anything, it's going to be really good practice to create a strategy that isn't inked in stone, but could be written in pencil and pen, but moving in the direction at least so that you're not standing still anymore. Do not be one of those 42% of people who are doing nothing, who are knowing but not doing anything. I have a couple more comments here. Um, let's see. Mark Evans, fun fact, put emotion in your prompts when necessary. It produces 10% better results. That's a great point, Mark. I would love to see where that data point comes from. And it's true, when you put emotions in, we don't think of these generative AI tools as emotional creatures, but they understand the urgency, the intent behind it. They can understand the context that I'm dealing with a very angry customer. They want a response. This is what they've written. This is what our policies are. Give me options of emails of how to respond to this angry customer with the following tone: understanding, empathetic, or understanding but firm. How do you want that emotion to be coming across? So these tools are really good at understanding how words can convey emotions. Um, so, for the event above, give me a better answer. My career depends on it. I think, Mark, that's a great answer to that. So, in many ways, we're talking about again having a little bit of fun here too. But I make it a routine to thank my AI. I like, that's a great answer. I'm giving the feedback, and I like to have it responded in. I like to refine in this way, or that answer wasn't what I expected, and I'm giving it feedback. I really wanted more of this. Can you do this now? So I'm really having a conversation, but because I'm giving it constant feedback, giving it constant context with my prompts, I'm giving it an understanding of how I think. And so there are these tools that are becoming much more personal. And as you build up a relationship with your AI, and I think this is where a lot of the tools are heading, the co pilot tools. is that they learn who you are. They learn how you think. They learn how you write emails. I use a tool called Superhuman for my email client, and it has an AI crafting tool in it. So, because it understands how I write email, because it has access to all of my emails. And so it'll craft an email based on a couple bullet points, based on how I usually do things. And it does sound like me. And it's being a little more verbose than I'm used to. And it's learning over time how I like to write emails with it as my co-pilot. So these are some of the early ways of how to think about all of these tools. And I encourage you again to think about how you can start using these tools and closing that gap between knowing, doing, and leading. All right, so that's what I have for today. Let me just share with you next week. I've been talking to a lot of salespeople about how to use generative AI and also some chief revenue officers. So if you have salespeople on your teams, if you are a CRO yourself, please tune in next week. Would love to get your comments and thoughts. It'll be November 14th at 9 a.m. And we'll talk about how generative AI is supporting sales. I spoke with one sales leader who goes, can you actually use this for sales? So I'll have some examples of how to do it. Also have some examples of how I actually also do this too as well. And we'll go on with that. And oh, one last comment here from Bob. Curious what the correlation between orgs which are mature in data analytics and generative AI adoption. It's one of the things we'll be testing in the survey is what are some of the correlations, if not causations, of generative AI adoption in use. And one of them is how advanced are you in having data? My initial understanding of this is it's super important if you're looking at the more advanced, more strategic implementations of generative AI. But from what I can see, it is not a determinant from doing a lot of those things in that doing area, setting up guidelines, looking for use cases, having training being done, creating an AI council. None of those are require that data and analytics be a prerequisite for that to happen. In fact, they're happening and they're realizing that their data is not in a place and it's becoming even more urgent to pay that data debt. But at least they're starting to focus on it with a very clear direction of where they want to end up. So I think that's great. It's a great question. It's something we're definitely going to be looking at in our survey. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. That's what I have for this week. And I will see you next week to talk about generative AI and sales. Take care. Bye-bye.